Hey everybody, welcome back to Archaeology After Dark. I'm of course Daniel Rhodes. My guest today is Dr. Meghan Buchanan. Meg, thanks for being here.
Yeah, no problem. Thanks for inviting me.
Absolutely. So, as all of you know, it is still National Archaeology Month, and I'm going to run that concept in the ground until the end of the month. So, just go ahead and settle in for that. Meg, tell us a little bit about yourself.
I'm currently an associate professor of anthropology at Auburn University in the Department of Sociology, Anthropology, and Social Work. Really big name there for just we have three to five programs mingled together in one department. I came here from originally from Illinois. I did my undergrad degree in anthropology at the University of Illinois. I worked with Tim Pocketat for several years on some of the excavations that he ran in the Cahokia region. I later moved down to Southern Illinois. I did a master's degree at Southern Illinois University in Carbondale, where I worked at the Kincaid Mound site. And then I did my PhD at Indiana University from 2008 to 2015, and spent some time working as an employee of the Glenn Black Lab of Archaeology before I got hired here at Auburn and moved down to Alabama.
Okay, so what are you guys working on at Auburn right now? My parents are going to kill me when I say this, but War Eagle.
War Eagle. We're doing a lot of work with collections right now. We have pretty extensive collections, primarily from historic Creek towns across the Tallapoosa River Valley. They're in various states of some are in kind of bad shape, some are in better shape. There's some that have catalogs, there's some that don't have catalogs. So part of what I do in teaching classes is I try to work those collections in as much as I possibly can. So this semester I'm teaching a class on curation, and a large component of that class is that students get hands-on experience with collections. We're also doing a NAGPRA project at the same time. So this becomes a good way to sort of dovetail teaching students about NAGPRA, doing NAGPRA compliance, but also learning how to manage collections. So we're working this semester with collections from the Fusacci site, which was excavated. It was a big salvage excavation in the 80s, led by John Cottier, Craig Sheldon, and Greg Wazelkov. So part of what we're doing this semester is just opening every single box, checking the FS numbers against any sort of records that we have to make sure that all of the funerary objects are pulled, and also to open all the bags of faunal remains in there to make sure that there's no human remains commingled. So students, once a week are just opening boxes, opening bags, cataloging what we have, and then pulling anything that might be related to NAGPRA so that we can set it aside for our NAGPRA coordinator.
I think
We just hired a new NAGPRA coordinator. So
I think that's really great the way you guys are letting students actually get like hands-on experience
yeah,
with like a collection. It's not you don't get that sort of hands-on education in a program outside of history or archaeology. It's not like
right.
you can actually touch math or something.
Yeah, yeah. And students love it. I mean, I think curation tends to be one of my best enrolled courses. Students ask about it when it's not being offered. And then when I do offer it, I mean, I hit enrollment, and sometimes I let in a few extra students if I've got the space for it. But they love it. I mean, every single week it's like, do we get to work with the collections this week? And sometimes I have to remind them, like we still have to do readings. We still have to learn about things like ethics and legal frameworks. But yes, you'll get to also work with the collections.
And that's something that I know people are probably tired of me harping on the ethics of archaeology, but that is something that as teachers and people who work with the community, we need to
Mm-hmm.
harp on the ethics of what we do to
Oh
people.
yeah.
So they're not just, tearing up landscapes throughout the
Yeah.
state and the country to loot and pilfer objects.
And I start all of my classes with ethics. I know sometimes people, especially when it comes to like intro to archaeology, sometimes start with methods, or they start a little bit with history and theory, and then ethics are something that kind of get tacked on at the end of the semester. I really front end ethics in my courses, because those ethical concerns are then what drive things like federal legislation, state legislation, the theories that we use, and then those theories then drive the methods that we employ in both the field and the lab. So I think it's really important for students in the classroom to have that sort of basic foundation. And I think it's also important to give them the space to debate ethics. I point out that the codes of ethics that we use in various organizations are living documents, that the context, the social context, the cultural context that we all live in are constantly changing. And so what we value as professionals and as amateur archaeologists are changing as time changes. So we do a lot with sort of debating ethics or looking at case studies to sort of discuss what are the different ethical concerns, who's impacted, how do you come to some kind of conclusion when you have an ethically ambiguous situation.
I know that happens to a lot of organizations, especially, during COVID, like they took the time to actually go back through their collections and make sure
Yeah.
they were up to the standards that the state and the government set for them to
Right.
maintain.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's a long process too. It's depending on the size of your collections and the scope and what's been done previously, even if you're just making updates, that can be a really long process. And here at Auburn, we have an even longer process, because we have salvage collections, we have collections from field schools, we have CRM collections. So each of them are sort of in different states of documentation, and it takes time to be able to get that all up to the standards, not only of the law, but our ethical standards and our own personal standards of how we want things to look.
But that also provides an opportunity for not only your current students, but
Mm-hmm.
incoming students to
Mm-hmm.
have plenty of opportunity to actually get in there and learn it firsthand.
Yeah, we really emphasize here in the anthropology program at Auburn that, we have relatively small class sizes, but that means that you get lots of opportunities as a student to work with a professor, to get those kinds of hands-on real world experiences, but to also be able to develop your own research. So we have students that get funding from the university to develop their own research projects that they can then present on at conferences, either here on campus or at state and regional conferences.
And that's, another thing that I think programs need to emphasize is students being comfortable presenting in front of people. Like,
Yeah.
if you're going to work on something, you need to have an opportunity to, you know, have it challenged, but also be able to present it to other
Yeah.
people.
And you have to be able to talk to people who don't necessarily know the same things that you know about archaeology or anthropology. You have to be able to communicate with people so that, when you do interact with the public, you're on the same page, right? That you're telling a story that they understand, and it isn't bogged down with tons of jargon.
Yeah, that was one thing that kind of made me nervous the first time I went to an archaeological society meeting here in Alabama. I was like, okay, I'm still an undergrad, and everyone in this room definitely knows more than I do.
Did that
Hi,
fear
my
go
name.
away quickly though?
Yeah, I was like, hi, my name is Daniel, and I'm an undergraduate student. And
Well,
that
we've
is
got some. Oh, go ahead.
that's all I knew.
Yeah, we've got some students here that are going to a forensics conference next month, and then some of them are also planning on heading to the Southeastern Archaeology Conference in November. So they aren't presenting, but they're really excited about just going and experiencing a conference.
Yeah, going to a conference is as a student, I can't express how great of an opportunity it is for
Hmm.
students to actually be able to go to conferences, talk to people, learn about their
Yeah.
programs, and learn just about people in general. You learn a lot about people spending time with them at a conference, sometimes way more than you actually want to.
you get to dispel some of that aura that you put around people. Like you read somebody's article and you're like, this person's so smart and they're doing such cool work. And then you go to somewhere like SEAC where there's a dance and you see this person out on a dance floor making a fool of themselves. And you're like, you know what? They're a person too.
Yeah, that's one thing I really enjoyed when I first started doing this program is, I didn't really know a lot of people, so I had to
Hmm.
build a network of people from the start. So
Yeah.
I started going on Twitter and I was seeing how vocal some people were and
Yeah.
realizing that, they're people just like me. It really dispels like the prestige of some people when they post something like hashtag Gur Mondays, my cat bit me.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. I remember too, my first SEAC, I went as an undergrad and we crammed like 10 people into a minivan and drove from central Illinois all the way down to Biloxi, Mississippi. We hit the coast like right as the sun was rising. We drove through the night and it was held at a casino that year. So just imagine like your first SEAC experience. Not only have you had no sleep, you're having a conference at a casino, and it was just like, wait, this is the way these people do archaeology down here. This is kind of neat. I could do this.
I could get on board with this. I love this. Yeah, when we were going to North Carolina last year,
Hmm.
it was, an 8 hour drive from Birmingham to North
Yeah.
Carolina. And we didn't get to North Carolina until like 5 a.m. or so. And then, we looked at our watches and we had to be at registration at 8 a.m. So we got an hour of sleep for that first day.
Yeah.
Ooh, it
Are you
was,
going to SEAC this year? Are you going to Little Rock?
I absolutely am. And I'm really looking forward to it.
Yeah, me too.
Are you going to be presenting anything this year, or are you just going for the
I'm
fun of it?
I'm not presenting, but I'm co-hosting a panel. So I'm working with some of the folks that I work with on the southeastern NAGPRA community of practice, which is just a group of people who do work with NAGPRA here in the Southeast. We host monthly Zoom meetings where people can join in and hear from, tribal historic professionals, museum professionals, academics, where folks are just talking about different aspects of doing NAGPRA compliance. So we got together. We're hosting a panel on successes, NAGPRA successes in the Southeast. So we really want to focus on, NAGPRA is now, gosh, 30 plus years old. So what kinds of positive outcomes are tribal representatives, representatives of federal agencies, and then representatives of state agencies? What are they seeing in terms of positive outcomes?
Yeah, that's something that kind of wowed me when I first learned about NAGPRA compliance in the field
Hmm.
is I was born in 88, so I'm actually older
Hmm.
than the NAGPRA law. And I was like, okay, I feel like that should be backwards, but okay.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean,
Like,
I think I was in elementary school when NAGPRA was passed. So I would have had absolutely no concept of it at all.
and it's a complicated issue, but it's also, one of the most important issues. This is just my opinion. It's one of the most important
Yeah.
issues that we have to work with in the field.
Hmm. I mean, I was just talking about changing ideas with regards to ethics. I mean, I remember in undergrad when I first learned about NAGPRA, that my sort of initial reaction was, oh my gosh, all these individuals that were excavated and their funerary objects, they're potentially going to go away and be reburied, and what a loss to the scientific field. Like that was what I thought back in the early 2000s. And then over time, learning more about the law, learning more about the history, actually being able to interact with fellow students who are indigenous and to hear from their perspective, I've really done a 180 with regards to how I think about NAGPRA. And now Now my opinion is sort of, folks held these ancestors and their belongings and collections for decades, and then put them on shelves, and they sat there frequently in a poor state of care. And now their descendants are saying, we want them back. We want to give them the rest that they deserve. And who am I to say no? So our position here at Auburn has very much been, we want to consult with descendant communities. We want to arrive at the best outcome possible. So, that's why when I first started here, I got the university to hire a NAGPRA coordinator, because initially people thought, well, maybe you can do that. Sure, you're teaching, you're doing research, you have a full-time job, but maybe you can do NAGPRA compliance too. And when I got a better sense of the scope of what needed to be done, it was like, this is not something that I can chip away at in the evenings or on the weekends. Like, we need somebody who's dedicated to doing NAGPRA compliance and documenting what we have, and consulting with descendant communities.
Like, you needed a person for just that. Like, this is what they do.
I mean, I need like 4 people to work on NAGPRA and collections and everything like that. But, right now, if I can get the one person to be dedicated to coordinating our NAGPRA efforts, then I consider that a pretty big success.
So, I did an episode on repatriation a few weeks ago. How does a university go about handling that? I assume it would be different from, say, a museum or a historic site.
Yeah. So most universities were supposed to have submitted inventories back in the 90s. Auburn and Auburn Montgomery did one jointly. So we have the main campus in Auburn. We have a sister campus in Montgomery, and frequently John Cottier and Craig Sheldon were doing projects together. So collections were kind of split across those campuses. So they filed NAGPRA documentation together. At that time, all of our collections, I believe, were listed as culturally unidentifiable. Part of the justification that I've seen in the paperwork for that was that while, yes, these were known historic Muskogee towns, with the Creek Civil War, with other actions that took place in the 1800s, there were some questions about, well, some Muskogee people migrated and moved down with the Seminoles, and some split into other areas. And so the explanation was, well, we can't pinpoint which tribe, which federally recognized tribe would be culturally affiliated, which is a misunderstanding of what cultural affiliation is and should be. So everything at Auburn sort of got filed in the 90s, and then it sat here since then. There weren't any sustained attempts at consultation. So when I got hired in 2016, the first step was just to try to figure out what had been done, what hadn't been done. I brought in a consultant from Indiana University, a good friend of mine, Dr. Jane Lee Thomas, who runs the NAGPRA project up there. She came down and spent 3 days with me and just looked through our collections and said, here's what you need to do. Here's how long it's going to take. Here's how much it's going to cost. So then I had a document. I could take that to a dean and show them that information. But pretty quickly after that, I'd started getting emails from the Muskogee Creek Nation, from the Choctaw Nation, just asking, why is everything from Auburn University listed as culturally unidentifiable? And I didn't have a good answer. And in fact, my answer was, this seems like they should be culturally affiliated. So part of what we're doing now is just going back through the collections, consulting with tribes to figure out what should be culturally affiliated, which is going to be the bulk of our collections, who can be culturally affiliated to them. And then we're also just looking through the rest of our collections to try to figure out, are there collections that were missed in the 90s? Collections that should have been listed in our NAGPRA inventories, which weren't. Because we have all of these collections from salvage operations, from CRM projects, things were missed. So we're slowly sort of going through our collections, and we're adding to what we have listed on the National NAGPRA website.
So, that's about wrapping it up for today. Meg, if people wanted to learn more about Auburn's program or just archaeology or NAGPRA here in
Yeah.
the state of Alabama, what advice would you give them?
Oh gosh. Well, we have, you can always visit the Auburn University website for the anthropology program. We also have on social media, we have Instagram and Facebook. So, check those out. Anybody who's just curious about NAGPRA too, the Southeastern NAGPRA Community of Practice is open to anyone. So if you're interested in joining and want more contact info about that, you can email me. My contact information is MEB, those are my initials, MEB0105@auburn.edu. And I'm happy to put you in touch with the organization so you can get on our email list and join for our next Zoom meeting.
Well, Meg, thank you so much for being here. I
Yeah.
really enjoyed having you on the show.
Yeah. Thanks for the invite.
Bye, everybody.